we have a very exciting Maya scene. We have a ball and a floor, and that's all that's in this scene. And the ball needs to bounce. We are at frame 1, and with Shift W, I'm going to fix it in space. I'm going to move to, like, say, frame 12, and move it down to the floor, down here, another Shift W, and then it's going to come up again, say frame 24, 25. It's going to go up again a little bit less. Shift W, and then it's going to go hit the floor again. Somewhere there. We want to, of course, be really precise. This should probably be frame 13. We want to be really precise when it hits the floor. So I know the ball is 1.5, so let's make it 1.5. And go back here and hit Shift W. And the other one, going to jump through the keyframes, should also be, I got pretty close, 1.5. Exact. So if we look, we have an actual animation. If we play it, it doesn't feel quite right. It goes hugging the floor and then kind of speeding up towards the end. So let's fix the hugging the floor first. Let's go into our graph editor and go to the Y and make sure it actually hits and then leaves the ground at the same speed. So I'm going to break the tangents, pull this one up, and pull this one up as well to make it kind of nicely round. And this one should probably be flat. There we go, and then it goes up, and then it should actually at the end also hit the floor running. And you can sort of see that it's not quite the right speed. In the X, you can see it actually speeds up towards the end. So this should actually be, and I can do that right here by going just up and down, more in a linear fashion, like straight like this. It can slow down. Actually, here it can't slow down because that's in mid-air. It can slow down a little, but only the moments it hits. So here there could be a little break if you want. Boom, boom. Of course, it might want to do more bounces, but this is the start of a bounce. Of course, when a ball bounces, it also rotates. So there's no reason for it to rotate before it hits the ground, but say here we want it to start rotating. Shift E gets me a keyframe on rotation. And say it rotates about, which way would it rotate? Well, I think if it hits the floor like this, it would get a push that way. Should it rotate forward? So say it rotates something like this. Get another keyframe on rotate. And that's fun, but it's not quite there yet. What is missing, obviously, is some squash and stretch. Now we could do the squash and stretch simply by scaling. So say before the frame before it hits the floor, we hit the scale Shift R, or into R. Then the moment it hits, it actually squashes. It also needs to come down a little then. Shift W, Shift R to fix that. And now it goes and poof, but then it stays flat. So say by the time it gets to the second bounce, it's back to normal. And fix that as well. And of course, it shouldn't just get thinner, it should also get wider. So the X and Y scale should actually increase as we do this. Shift R again, and now we have a first bounce. And it doesn't come back to its original size at the end because I didn't set a keyframe. So let's make this all 1 and set another keyframe. No, don't hit Shift R there. Go back to my viewport and do Shift R here. Whee! But now we have a problem. There's a second bounce here. But if I scale it, that's not the way to scale it. The ball is now rotated, so it needs to scale in a different direction. It needs to scale in this direction. So let's fix that. Well, we can't fix that with the ball itself. So how could we possibly fix that? The trick is in not using scale for the squash and stretch. The trick is using a squash deformer for the squash and stretch. So let's take out all the scale animation. Scale is no longer animated, as you can see over there in the channel editor. Oh, Z is still animated. Where's Z? Why did Z not get selected? Z is also gone. So instead of using scale to squash and stretch, we can also add a deformer, a non-linear deformer, the squash. And that allows us to, if we go back to our outliner, there's an input that's called squash that has a factor that determines how much it squashes and stretches. Now by default it expands in the other directions as much as it contracts in the one direction. So putting it on 0.5 makes it more volume preserving. So we set the factor to 0, the frame before it hits the ground, that will be 12. We set a keyframe, key selected by right clicking on it. We then go to the frame when it hits the floor, and that should be this one. Oh, it's actually, I moved it one out, so this one should move to 13, and it hits the floor on 14. There we should squash it. No, not stretch it. Ooh, the squash is completely wrong. That is because the squash handle isn't moving with the ball. Now it is. So let's go back to where we were, get the squash handle, go to the squash, there's the factor. I already put a keyframe on 13, let's go one frame on to 14, and let's zoom in on that. Select the factor out here and then middle mouse drag to make it squash exactly the right amount. That works. Of course, we need to again set a keyframe. Zoom out and see if that works. Yes, but it doesn't regain its shape. So by the time, just before it hits, you want to have it regain its shape. So yet another keyframe, key selected. Now here, we wanted to squash again. But the squash handle is also wrong. Also squashes it in the wrong direction. And we did this exactly to avoid that. What we can do is on the frame before it hits, set a keyframe on the rotation of the squash handle, and then the frame after it, rotate it so that handle is exactly aligned with the floor. How do we know what it needs to be? Well, we can look at the ball. The ball has rotation of 55. Copy that. In the squash handle, we paste it, and it's minus 55 for the ball, and we make it 55 for the squash handle. Then we key that again, Shift E, and then we go to the squash handle again, select the squash, the factor, and again have it go flat, or we could exaggerate it and have it go completely flat. And right click on the factor to set the keyframe. The only thing now is that it's above the ground, so I need to go to the ball and take the Y and move that down so it's exactly on the ground. So, really quick and dirty, this is how you can make a ball with a texture, bounce and squash and stretch. It actually flattens out, but that's okay.